One of the most common questions I get these days is about those big special payments from the Social Security Administration. People hear about them online or from a friend, and naturally, they start wondering, wait a second, could I get one of those too? And if you're on SSDI or SSI, that's an even bigger question because the rules and situations can get tricky fast. It's the kind of thing where the answer isn't just yes or no, it depends on a whole bunch of different moving parts. So today, I want to walk you through it step by step, without the complicated legal talk, so you can see exactly where you stand and why some people get these payments while others never will. A few days ago, I made a video talking about one of these lump sum payments. It's something that Social Security offers under specific circumstances, and right away, the questions started rolling in. People were writing, "Hey, I'm on SSDI, can I get this big payment?" Or "I'm on SSI, does this apply to me?" And I get it. Who wouldn't want to know if a nice big check might be headed your way? But here's the thing, less than a quarter of all Social Security beneficiaries are eligible for the particular payment I was talking about in that video. That's right, around 24% or less. Which means the vast majority of people out there never see it. But there are other kinds of lump sums, and that's where it gets interesting. Social Security is one of those programs where the details really matter. You can't just hear about something and assume it's going to work the same way for everyone. SSDI, SSI, retirement benefits, they each have their own rules. They look similar on the surface, but underneath, they're different animals. That's why so many people end up confused or even underpaid without realizing it. I can't tell you how many times someone has told me, when I applied, it was so complicated, I just said, forget it, just give me my benefit now. And that's perfectly understandable, because the system throws so many numbers, percentages, and dates at you that it can feel overwhelming. That's why I keep making these videos, because Social Security is always changing, and if you're not paying attention, you could miss something important. And trust me, the changes often happen quietly. They don't exactly send out flashing alerts to every beneficiary when they tweak a rule or create a new option. You have to know what to look for. Now, let's rewind a little and talk about the lump sum payment I mentioned in that other video. This one applies specifically to retirement beneficiaries who delay claiming their benefits until after their full retirement age. If you're in that situation, Social Security gives you two options. You can take the higher monthly benefit you've built up by waiting, or you can ask for up to 6 months of retroactive payments in a lump sum. It's kind of a trade-off. You get the cash up front, but you give up some of the permanent increase you earned by delaying. Here's how that works in numbers. For every month you delay after your full retirement age, your benefit grows by 2/3 of 1%. That's about 8% a year. Wait 6 months, and you've built yourself a 4% permanent raise. But if you take the lump sum, they pay you those 6 months of benefits all at once, and your ongoing monthly amount drops back down to what it was 6 months earlier. Now, that's a retirement-specific situation. And to be clear, SSDI and SSI beneficiaries aren't included in that particular deal. And here's the part that matters for you: SSDI and SSI have their own forms of lump sum payments. They usually come in the form of back pay, which is basically money you're owed for the period between when you became eligible and when you actually started getting checks. Let's take SSDI first. If you apply for disability benefits, there's a built-in 5-month waiting period from the time Social Security determines you became disabled. After that, once your claim is approved, they'll pay you back for the months you waited beyond those first 5. If the process took a long time, and let's be honest, for most people it does, that can mean thousands of dollars in a one-time payment. This is why some people see a big check at the beginning of their SSDI benefits, while others just start with their regular monthly amount. It all depends on how long your application took, when they say your disability started, and a few other factors unique to your case. SSI works a little differently. Back pay is still possible, but it doesn't usually stretch back as far as SSDIs can. With SSI, your eligibility starts the month after you apply, so the back pay is for the months between then and when you're approved. It can still be a few $1,000s in some cases, but you're not going to get years' worth all at once. And SSI back pay is often split into up to 3 smaller payments, spaced out over several months, depending on the amount and your situation. Here's the key takeaway: if you've been on SSDI or SSI for years, you're not suddenly going to get a big random lump sum just because someone else did. These payments happen when you first start receiving benefits, not later on. That's one of the biggest misunderstandings I see. People hear about lump sums and think they might just pop up out of nowhere, but they're tied to specific events, usually the start of your benefits or a delay in receiving them. Back to that retirement example for a moment, because it's worth noting just how powerful delaying can be if you can afford to do it. Someone with a full retirement age of 67 who waits until 70 will see about a 24% permanent increase in their monthly benefit on top of any cost of living adjustments that come along. That's huge. But it's also not realistic for everyone. Most people, about 2/3, claim their retirement benefits between ages 62 and their full retirement age, and that's perfectly fine. There's no right or wrong here, just trade-offs to understand. For SSDI and SSI, the timing decisions are different. SSDI is all about proving your disability and the start date of it, while SSI focuses on financial eligibility. With both, the faster your application moves, the smaller your back pay lump sum will be because there's less time to pay you for. But the flip side is that if your application drags on for months or even years, you might be looking at a very large first payment once everything is finally approved. I think what makes this topic so confusing is that Social Security is really multiple programs under one name. People hear Social Security and think it's all one set of rules, but in reality, SSDI, SSI, and retirement are separate tracks with their own quirks. That's why you'll see me keep repeating certain clarifications, because without them, it's too easy to get mixed up and think a rule for retirees also applies to disability or vice versa. And one last thing, while these lump sum payments can feel like a windfall, they're not bonus money in the sense of free extra cash. It's money you were already entitled to, it just got delayed on the way to you. That's why it's so important to understand your timeline and know exactly how they calculated your start date. That's the foundation for figuring out whether a lump sum is even on the table for you. I've been following these stories for years, watching how the rules shift and how beneficiaries respond, and I can tell you this: knowledge is your best tool. Too many people just take whatever Social Security offers without questioning it, and while sometimes that's fine, other times it means you leave money on the table. If you're applying now or thinking about it, knowing these details ahead of time could make the difference between getting every dollar you're due and missing out. So, to circle back to the original question, if you're on SSDI or SSI, are you included in the retirement lump sum payment I talked about before? No, not in that form. But you do have your own version of lump sums, usually tied to back pay when your benefits first begin. That's where your focus should be if you're wondering about a big check. Look at your application date, your approval date, and your official eligibility date. That's the triangle that determines your outcome. I know this is a lot to take in, and honestly, this is the condensed version. If I went into every detail, we'd be here for hours. That's why I break these topics down into smaller, focused videos so you can digest them one piece at a time without getting buried in jargon. Social Security may never be simple, but it doesn't have to be a mystery either. If you're sitting there thinking you might have missed out on something, it's worth revisiting your paperwork or even calling Social Security to ask specific questions about your case. And if you're still in the application stage, take your time. Get your documentation right. Know your key dates. Those are the things that could shape your first payment in a very big way. And please remember, whether you're on SSDI, SSI, or retirement benefits, your situation is unique. Just because your neighbor got a lump sum doesn't mean you will, and just because someone else didn't get one doesn't mean you won't. The only way to know is to understand your own timeline and the rules that apply to your specific program. Social Security isn't designed to make this easy on you. But that's why I'm here to cut through the noise, explain the moving parts, and help you figure out what's real, what's possible, and what's just rumor. Because when you've got the facts, you can make decisions that actually work for you in your future. And that's worth a whole lot more than chasing stories that don't apply to your situation. So, keep asking questions, keep looking out for updates, and never assume that what applies to one group automatically applies to another. That's the surest way to stay in control of your benefits and to make sure you get every single dollar you've earned.